They tried to cage his spirit, but they forgot that an iron heart can never be truly contained. Witness the epic journey of those who broke their chains and fought for the freedom they deserved. Click subscribe now and witness the power of a heart made of steel. My supervisor called my emergency contact at 7:12 a.m. By 7:58, she was sitting in the oncology waiting room with a coffee she'd bought for me, asking the front desk nurse which treatment bay I was in. My mother got the same call at 7:15 a.m. By noon, she still hadn't replied to my texts. I didn't know any of this while it was happening. I was too busy trying not to fall apart in a paper gown under fluorescent lights, listening to a doctor explain what stage 2 meant and what the next 6 weeks would look like. The diagnosis had come 3 weeks earlier. But the biopsy results, the ones that confirmed we weren't waiting anymore, that treatment was starting now, those came on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd driven myself to the appointment because my brother said he had a site inspection he couldn't reschedule, and my parents said they'd come to the important ones. I had assumed a biopsy confirmation appointment qualified. I was wrong. The oncologist, Dr. Reeves, was calm and precise. Breast cancer, stage 2, caught early enough that the prognosis was genuinely good. 6 weeks of radiation, possibly followed by a short hormone therapy course. I would keep my hair. I would probably keep my job. I would be fine, statistically speaking. "Is there someone with you today?" she asked, glancing at the empty chair beside me. "They're coming," I said. Force of habit. She looked at me the way doctors look at you when they don't believe you, but don't want to make it worse. "You'll want support for the treatment period. It's not usually painful, but it's exhausting. Emotionally more than physically for most people. Do you have someone who can drive you to sessions?" I told her I'd figure it out. I'd been figuring things out by myself for so long that the phrase came out automatically, the way you say fine when someone asks how you're doing at the grocery store. You don't even hear yourself say it anymore. My name is Avery. I'm 31 years old, and for approximately the last 4 years, I have been my family's primary financial resource, emotional support system, and apparently, optional priority. My brother Fletcher is 27. He has been, for as long as I can remember, the one my parents orbit around. Not in a cruel, obvious way. Not the kind of favoritism you can point to and say, "Look, there it is." It was softer than that. More like the way a house tilts so gradually you don't notice until all your furniture has slid to one side. Fletcher wanted to open a restaurant. He had wanted this since he was 22, which meant for 5 years he had been in various stages of almost there. The menu changed. The concept changed. The location changed. The only constant was the money, specifically where it came from. First, it was the business plan. He needed $18,000 for a consultant and market research. My parents asked if I could help since I'd just gotten the promotion. I helped. Then it was the commercial kitchen equipment. $31,000. I was doing well, they said. Fletcher was trying so hard, I helped. Then the build-out costs ran over budget, $27,500. It was just a loan, they said. Fletcher would pay me back when the restaurant opened and started turning a profit. I helped. By the time his grand opening was scheduled, I had given my brother $94,000 over 3 years. I kept the records in a folder on my laptop titled Home Renovation Estimates, because I couldn't stand to look at the actual label. I knew what the total was. I didn't need to see it every time I opened my files. The grand opening was set for a Saturday in April. My parents had been in Savannah for 2 weeks helping Fletcher with the final preparations, decorating, training staff, meeting with the local press contacts my mother had cultivated through her book club connections. They were staying through the weekend for the opening. My first radiation session was scheduled for that Friday morning. I had told my mother about the treatment start date 6 weeks earlier, the day after Dr. Reeves laid out the plan. I had texted her the exact date, the time, the hospital name. She had responded, We'll be there, sweetheart. This is the important one. I had believed her. That was my mistake. But it wasn't the first time I'd made it, and I'm not sure it would have been the last if things hadn't gone the way they did. Thursday night, my phone rang. My mother. Avery, honey, I need to tell you something, and I need you to try to understand. Her voice had that particular texture it gets when she's about to ask for something or explain something I'm not going to like. Smooth and careful, like she's reading from a script she's been rehearsing. I waited. The restaurant is having some last-minute issues. The health inspector found 2 things that need to be addressed before tomorrow, and Fletcher is absolutely beside himself. You know how he gets. Your father and I think we really need to stay through the weekend to help him through this. The opening is Saturday, and if he has to handle this alone. My first treatment is tomorrow, I said. I know, sweetheart, I know, and we feel terrible. But Dr. Reeves said the prognosis is good, right? You told us it was caught early. It's still cancer, Mom. Of course, of course. But you're strong, Avery. You've always been the one who handles things. Fletcher doesn't handle stress the way you do. You know that. You've always been able to manage. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the wall. I had painted that wall myself 2 years ago, a color called Quiet Morning. A soft gray-blue I had picked out on a Saturday I spent entirely alone, because Fletcher needed help moving equipment and my parents had driven up to assist. What about after? I asked. The sessions are every weekday for 6 weeks. We'll come as soon as the opening is over. Monday at the latest. Maybe Sunday night if we can manage it. It's only 1 session, Avery. The nurses will be there. I thought about the $94,000. I thought about the Friday afternoon 2 years ago when I transferred the last large sum, $27,500, and cried in my car in the parking garage because I had just looked at my savings account and realized I'd been slowly hollowing it out for 3 years, and I was too tired to be angry about it yet. Okay, I said, because I didn't have the energy for anything else. You're so understanding. Fletcher is so lucky to have you. When the restaurant takes off, he's going to pay you back everything, you know that. I'd heard that before. I went to my first radiation session alone. My supervisor, Donna, had found out about the diagnosis through a colleague I'd confided in, and she had shown up to the waiting room without asking permission or announcement. She handed me a coffee and sat beside me and didn't ask me to explain anything. You don't have to talk, she said. I just didn't want you to be by yourself. I hadn't cried yet, not once since the diagnosis. I cried then, a little, in the waiting room, and Donna pretended not to notice in the kindest possible way. The session itself was fast, 20 minutes. The actual radiation is nothing. You don't feel it. You just lie still and listen to a machine move around you, and try not to think too hard about what it's doing. The technician, a young woman named Hadley, walked me through everything and told me the fatigue usually kicks in around week 3, and to drink a lot of water and to be gentle with myself. Is someone driving you home? She asked. I drove myself. She paused just long enough for me to notice. Do you have someone who can drive you, at least for the later sessions? The fatigue can sneak up on you. I'll figure it out, I said. I went home and ate cereal for dinner and watched 3 episodes of a cooking competition show and tried not to look at my phone. Fletcher had posted on Instagram that morning, 12 hours until we open our doors. Grateful for every single person who believed in this dream. He had tagged our parents in the caption. He had not mentioned me. My mother called the next morning. Saturday, the day of the grand opening. Avery, how did it go yesterday? Was it terrible? It was fine. 20 minutes. See, you're such a trooper. How are you feeling? Tired. A little nauseous. Oh, that's normal, right? Dr. Reeves said the first few sessions are the hardest adjustment. Listen, I have to tell you, the opening last night was incredible. The restaurant looks absolutely beautiful. The food critic from the Savannah paper came and she stayed for 2 hours. Fletcher was in his element, you should have seen him. Your father actually teared up. I thought about the $94,000. When are you coming? I asked. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. The careful voice again. Fletcher wants to do a brunch service tomorrow. Sort of a soft opening for the neighborhood. And we really want to be here for it. You understand, right? It's such a pivotal time for the restaurant. We'll leave Monday morning. Be there by Monday evening. Monday evening. That was 4 days after my first treatment. Okay, I said. You're incredible, Avery, truly. You've always been the one we don't have to worry about. I hung up and turned my phone face down on the counter and stood in my kitchen for a while, not doing anything in particular. Donna texted, "How are you feeling today? You don't have to answer that. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you." I answered her. I didn't answer my mother's follow-up text about the brunch reservation time. The second week of treatment was harder. The fatigue hit on day 8, exactly like Hadley had said it would, like a slow tide coming in. I was still going to work. I'd negotiated with Donna to shift my hours so I could do early morning sessions and be at my desk by 9. And she had agreed without hesitation and told me the team would cover anything I needed covered. My coworker Petra started leaving small things on my desk, a protein bar, a green juice, once a handwritten note that just said, "You're doing great, we see you." These people, my colleagues, they rearranged their schedules and left me snacks and told me I mattered. My parents sent a text on Tuesday, leaving Savannah tomorrow, be there Thursday. Fletcher wanted us to stay for a meeting with a potential investor. Thursday. 9 days after my first session. I didn't respond. The third week, I started noticing something odd. I arrived at my Tuesday session and Hadley mentioned, almost offhandedly, that there had been someone asking about me at the front desk the previous Friday. An older woman, maybe late 50s, gray hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain. She hadn't given her name. She'd asked if Avery Chen was a patient there, whether she was doing okay. And when Hadley said she couldn't discuss patient information, the woman had left a small envelope and asked if it could be placed with my belongings. Inside the envelope was a card. The outside had a simple watercolor of a bird on a branch, the kind of card you find at independent bookstores. Inside, in careful, slanted handwriting, "I know you don't know me. Or maybe you don't remember. I'm so sorry about what you're going through. You deserve people who show up. No name, no contact information." I turned it over twice. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Or almost unfamiliar. There was something about the way the letters were formed. The looping lowercase g, the way the capital I was written with a small serif, that tugged at something I couldn't locate. I asked Hadley what the woman looked like. "Older," she said. "Soft-spoken. She seemed like she really knew you, but she kept saying she didn't have the right to bother you." Didn't have the right. Strange phrase. I put the card in my bag and thought about it for the rest of the day. She came back on Thursday. I know because Hadley texted me. She'd asked if she could, and I'd said yes. More out of exhaustion than curiosity. But by then, I was curious. She left flowers this time. Not a grocery store bouquet, but something considered. Stems of eucalyptus and white ranunculus, tied simply with brown paper twine. The card with them said only, "Still here." I started arriving a few minutes early to my sessions, telling myself it was about parking. The fourth week, my parents finally arrived. Thursday night, 13 days after my first treatment. My mother walked into my apartment carrying a casserole dish and a bag of groceries and said, "We came as soon as we could," with such complete sincerity that I almost didn't say anything. "The brunch," I said. "The investor meeting. What else?" "I'm not angry," I said, and that was mostly true. I was past angry, I was in some quieter territory on the other side of it, somewhere that felt like clear water after a long rain. I just want to know if you understand what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. You've been resting and recovering the way you should be. I've been driving myself to treatment every day. Alone. Going to work. Making my own meals. Managing everything. By myself. My mother set the casserole on the counter. Donna said, "Donna is my supervisor. She's not my family." My mother looked at me and I looked at her, and the kitchen was very quiet. "We're here now," she said. "Yes," I said. "You are." I let them stay. I'm not sure why exactly, except that I was tired and the casserole smelled good, and some part of me still believed that presence meant something even when it came late. My father was quiet and helpful in the way he always is when he knows things have gone sideways. He fixed a squeaky cabinet hinge I'd been ignoring for months. Restocked my refrigerator. Drove me to my Friday session without being asked. But my mother talked about the restaurant the entire time. The critic's review, the investor, the renovation Fletcher was already considering for the outdoor patio. She talked about it the way you talk about something that is the center of your world. And I sat across from her at my own kitchen table and understood, with the kind of clarity that only exhaustion can produce, that it was. Fletcher's restaurant was the center of her world. I was the reliable perimeter, always there, never required. On Saturday morning, she asked if I could transfer $8,000 to Fletcher's account. A supplier had delivered the wrong refrigeration unit, and the replacement cost was more than Fletcher had liquid right now. "Just until the restaurant cash flow stabilizes," she said. "He'll pay you back?" I put down my coffee. "No," I said. She blinked. "Avery, no. I'm in cancer treatment. I haven't worked full hours in 3 weeks. I've given Fletcher $94,000 over 3 years, and I have not received $1 back. The answer is no." My mother stared at me. My father, who was standing at the kitchen window pretending to look at the yard, went very still. "You're being dramatic," my mother said, finally. "It's a temporary cash flow issue. I know what it is," I said. "The answer is still no." She left 2 hours later. Said she needed to think. My father hugged me before he followed her out, quietly, the way he does everything, and said, "She loves you, you know." I didn't say anything back. Love that operates like a transaction is still a transaction. That afternoon, Hadley texted me. "The woman was here again this morning. She asked if you were doing okay. She left something." I was still in my apartment. My parents had been there 48 hours. I had said one firm no, and my mother had left. I sat with that for a minute, the smallness of what it had taken to make her go. I texted Hadley back. "Can you ask her to come to my Tuesday session? Tell her I'd like to meet her." Monday, I went to work. Donna had arranged a small thing, nothing formal. A card signed by the team, some flowers from Petra, a gift card to the restaurant near the hospital I'd mentioned once in passing. I sat at my desk and read the card and thought about the accounting of it all. On one side, my brother's $94,000, my parents' 13-day delay, the casserole that came with a request for $8,000. On the other side, Donna showing up at the waiting room with coffee, Petra's protein bars, Hadley's texts, a stranger's ranunculus, and a card that said "still here." The math was not complicated. Tuesday I arrived 10 minutes early. I sat in the waiting room and watched the door. She came in at 8:47, the woman from the security description. Late 50s, gray hair cut short and practical, reading glasses on a beaded chain exactly as Hadley had described. She was wearing a blue linen jacket and carrying a canvas tote bag, and she stopped when she saw me, just inside the door, and her face did something complicated. "Avery," she said. Not a question. "That's me," I said. "I don't know your name." She came closer and sat in the chair 1 seat away, the way you sit near a bird you don't want to startle. "My name is Rosalind," she said. "I'm your mother's older sister. I'm the aunt you were told passed away when you were 9 years old." I heard the words. My brain processed them at a slight delay, like a video buffering. "I'm sorry?" Rosalind folded her hands in her lap. They were steady, but I could see the effort it took. "Your mother cut me out of her life when you were 9. She told you and Fletcher I had died. I found out 2 years later, when a mutual cousin let it slip, that you both believed I was gone." "Why?" I said. "Why did she cut you out?" Rosalind was quiet for a moment. "Because I told her what she was doing to you was wrong. You were 7 years old and already being asked to be responsible for Fletcher's feelings. His tantrums, his failures at school, his needs. They were always redirected to you. Help your brother. Be gentle with your brother. Your brother needs more right now." I told her it was going to damage you. She told me to mind my own business. When I didn't stop, she removed me. The waiting room was quiet around us. Soft music from a speaker I'd never noticed. Someone across the room reading a magazine. "You've been coming here," I said. "Every week." "I've been following your life from a distance for a long time," she said. Not intrusively. "I want to be clear about that. I don't know the details of your days. But I knew about the diagnosis because your mother told the same cousin who told me, not as a concern, more as an explanation for why she might be unavailable for some things in the coming months." Rosalind paused. "She didn't say she was planning to come to treatment with you. She said she hoped you'd manage fine on your own because Fletcher's opening was the same month." Something cold moved through me. "When I realized you were here and that no one from your family was coming, I couldn't stay away, but I didn't have the right to walk in. I didn't know if you even knew I existed, much less if you'd want to see me." "She told me you were dead," I said slowly. "I know. For 22 years. I know." Her voice was careful and sad and entirely steady, and it reminded me of something I couldn't place immediately, and then I placed it. It reminded me of Donna in the waiting room on day 1, handing me a coffee and not asking me to explain anything. "Why are you here now?" I asked. "Why now and not before?" "Because before you seemed okay, not happy but okay. Managing." She looked at her hands. "And then I found out about the diagnosis and about the opening, and I thought, maybe this is the moment she finally sees it. Not the cancer. The pattern. The way they've always treated you." I thought about the $94,000. I thought about my mother's voice saying, "You've always been the one we don't have to worry about," as though that were a compliment. I thought about spending my lunch breaks transferring money I'd spent years saving while Fletcher posted photos of himself in commercial kitchens I'd paid for. "Is there more?" I asked. "That I don't know?" Rosalind reached into her canvas tote. She pulled out a manila folder, thin, and held it for a moment before passing it to me. "I want to be careful how I say this. I'm not trying to cause more damage. But I think you need to see it." Inside the folder were 2 documents. The first was a bank statement, not mine, with 2 transactions highlighted. The second was a screenshot of a text conversation between my mother and someone labeled Rosalind, from 11 years ago, before the complete cutoff had apparently gone into effect. In it, my mother wrote, "Avery got a scholarship for state school, the full tuition grant. God knows she worked hard enough for it." I looked up. "You got a partial academic grant," Rosalind said. "A legitimate one, I want to be clear. But the full tuition your mother was describing to people, that included a supplemental fund I set up. I'd been adding to it for years. Your mother found out about it 4 years ago through the same cousin. She has not told you." "Where is it?" I asked. Rosalind turned to the second document, a savings account, in my name, that I had never known existed. Rosalind was the account trustee. The balance was $163,000. I sat with that number for a long time. Longer than probably made sense in a waiting room. "It's yours," Rosalind said. "It has always been yours. I set it up when you were 11 because I could see what was coming. I added to it every year. I want you to have it now, not because I'm trying to buy my way back into your life, but because you have earned it, and then some. And because I think you need a foundation that doesn't have anything to do with what they've taken from you." I thought about $94,000, given freely. I thought about $163,000, saved quietly without my knowledge, by a woman I had been told was dead. "She knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And she never told me." "No." "Because she was going to use it. For Fletcher." Rosalind didn't say anything. She didn't have to. My treatment session was called then. My name over the intercom. I stood, and my legs were steadier than I expected. "Will you wait?" I asked. "As long as you need," she said. The session was the same as every other session, 20 minutes. The machine. Hadley's quiet efficiency. But I cried the entire time, silently, staring at the ceiling. And Hadley handed me tissues without comment afterward and said, "Good session, Avery. See you Thursday." Rosalind was in the same chair when I came out. We went to the coffee place across the street and sat for 2 hours. She told me about being cut out, about watching from the outside, about the years she'd spent half convinced she was overstepping and half convinced she wasn't doing enough. I told her about the money, all of it, every transfer. She listened without interrupting, without performing outrage. Just listened, the way people listen when they already know the shape of a story and are waiting to find out how it ends. "What do?" I asked, eventually. "I think you already know. She's my mother." "Yes, and she has treated you like a resource for your entire life. Both of those things are true." That evening my mother called. I answered. "Avery, I've been thinking and I want to apologize for leaving so abruptly." "I met Rosalind today," I said. Silence, long enough that I could hear a television in the background. "She's been coming to my treatment sessions," I said. "Every week, while you were in Savannah, while you were at the brunch and the investor meeting. She was in the waiting room." "Avery, I can explain." "I know about the account," I said. "The savings account, in my name, that you've known about for 4 years and never mentioned." The silence was different this time. "That money was, we were going to talk to you about it. We thought if the restaurant needed, you were going to give my money to Fletcher." "It's not, it was a loan situation, Avery, and Rosalind had no right to set that up without telling us." "She had every right," I said. "It's my money. She set it up for me." My mother's voice changed, not the careful reading from a script voice. Something harder underneath it. "She has poisoned you against your family." "I don't know what she told you. But she was always jealous of what I had. Always trying to undermine." "She told me you said she was dead," I said. "She told me you cut her out for saying the truth about how you were treating me. And she told me that truth, and I recognize it because I've been living it. You don't understand." "I understand $94,000 over 3 years," I said. "I understand 13 days into cancer treatment alone. I understand an $8,000 request 48 hours after you finally arrived. I understand you were going to take a $163,000 account that a woman built for me over 20 years and redirect it to Fletcher's restaurant." My mother started crying. Real crying, not performed. I know the difference after 31 years. "I love you, Avery. You know I love you. I know you love me the way you can," I said. "But I can't keep accepting the version of love that also asks me to fund my own disappearance." I hung up. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. The remaining 4 weeks of treatment, Rosalind came with me to every session. She didn't make it a big thing. She just showed up at 8:40, sat with me in the waiting room, drove me home on the days I was too tired, made tea, and left when I needed quiet. She had a life. She made that clear. She wasn't inserting herself everywhere. She was just there for the thing she was there for. My parents called 4 more times. I let them go to voicemail. My father's messages were short and sad and didn't ask for anything. My mother's were long and cycled through several phases: apology, explanation, guilt, and one that was mostly about Fletcher's refrigeration unit still not being resolved. I listened to all of them once and then deleted them. Fletcher called once. "Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. I just want to make sure you're okay. Also, I have an opportunity to expand the menu with a bar program in the startup costs are." I hung up and blocked the number. I hired a financial advisor. Rosalind helped me find one, a woman named. It doesn't matter. The point is, she was good and patient and did not react to the account summary with anything more than a slight professional pause. We put together a plan. I stopped checking my bank balance with the particular dread I'd been carrying for 4 years. The absence of that dread felt, in the first weeks, almost like a physical sensation, like putting down something heavy I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it had weight. At week 6, Dr. Reeves cleared me. "You did excellent," she said. "Your numbers look great. Come back in 3 months and we'll do a follow-up scan, but I'm very optimistic." Rosalind took me to dinner that night. A good restaurant, not Fletcher's. We ordered things I wouldn't normally order, wine I wouldn't normally spend money on, and she told me stories about what I'd been like as a small child. Things I didn't remember. How I used to collect interesting rocks and present them to adults as though they were rare objects. How I'd once written a play for the family Christmas party that had 4 acts and an intermission. "What happened to her?" I asked. "That kid." "She's still here," Rosalind said. "She just had to go quiet for a while." I started running. Small things, a 10-minute walk, that became 20, that became 30, that became a slow jog around the neighborhood park, that left me winded. But something else too. I started calling people back. Friends I'd been too tired and too financially stressed to maintain. And was surprised how many of them were simply glad to hear from me. No explanation required. My mother sent a letter, handwritten, 8 pages. I read the first 2, which were genuinely sad and full of the kind of language that costs something to produce, and then I stopped and put it down. I wasn't ready for it. I was not sure I would ever be ready for 8 pages. My father drove up on a Thursday, unannounced, and stood at my door looking older than I'd remembered. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't mention Fletcher or the restaurant. He said, "I should have done more. I know that." And then he left. I stood in the doorway after his car was gone and thought about what more would have looked like all those years and whether it would have been enough. And I didn't arrive at any conclusions, but I didn't feel like I had to. At 6 months out from the diagnosis, the follow-up scan came back clear. I called Rosalind first. She cried in the way people cry when they've been quietly terrified and are now quietly relieved, and I thought about how she had been afraid for me, carrying my health, my well-being as a concern, without my even knowing she existed. 22 years of invisible care, 22 years of a person holding a candle in a window for someone who didn't know to look for it. Fletcher's bar program launched. Then struggled. Then, 8 months after I finished treatment, the restaurant closed. The refrigeration issues had been a sign, not an anomaly. Fletcher called from an unknown number. "Emma, Avery, sorry. Avery, I need to talk to you. Things have gotten bad and I just need..." I hung up. Some calls don't need to go further than hello. My mother reached out through a cousin, asking if I would consider family mediation. I said I would think about it, which was not a yes, and not a no, which felt right for where I actually was. I had a therapist by then who I liked, a person who had a good way of asking questions that made you think you'd arrived at the answers yourself. She said, "The door doesn't have to be locked or open. It can just be a door." I wrote that down. The 1-year mark came in March, the same month as the diagnosis had come. Rosalind and I went on a trip we'd talked about since week 2 of treatment, when she'd mentioned she'd always wanted to see the coast of Maine. We drove up on a Friday and stayed through the following Wednesday and ate lobster and read books and walked on cold beaches, and I did not check my bank account once with fear. I'm still writing. I started a blog, nothing serious, no agenda, just a place to put things down. I wrote one post about being a family's financial resource and watching a stranger care more about your cancer treatment than your parents did, and it was shared by enough people that I had to turn off my notifications for 2 days. The comments were full of people who had their own $94,000 stories, their own delayed arrivals, their own strangers with ranunculus and cards that said "still here." I was not alone in this. None of us were. Fletcher found the post. Of course he did. He sent an email I didn't open. Then another. I blocked the address. He found another one. I set up a filter that moved anything from his name or his restaurant's domain directly to a folder I could choose to look at or not, on my own terms, which is the only terms I'm operating on anymore. My mother's 8th letter arrived last month. I read the whole thing. There were parts that were true, and parts that were rationalizations, and parts that were genuinely, I think, grief. For the version of our relationship she had believed existed while hollowing out the real one. I did not respond yet. I may not. I'm still deciding, and the deciding feels like something I'm allowed to take time on. Rosalind came for dinner last Sunday. She brings things, good cheese, a book she thinks I'll like. Once a houseplant I'd been coveting from a nursery I mentioned exactly once in passing. She stays long enough for it to feel like company, and leaves before it feels like obligation. We are still learning how to be family to each other, which is, I think, how it works when you are building something that was taken from you before it had a chance to be built. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry. I'm not, mostly. I was, for a while, a clean, clarifying anger that helped me do what I needed to do. But what I feel now is something quieter, more like the rock collection I used to make as a kid, picking up what seemed worth keeping, setting down the rest, presenting the good ones to people who would appreciate them. I spent 4 years being the person my family didn't have to worry about. I am working on becoming a person who doesn't require that particular kind of math. I'm not there yet, but I'm running around the park in the mornings now, and I'm reading books I like again, and I have a clear scan and $163,000 in an account that no one else has a claim to. And Rosalind texted me this morning just to say the hydrangeas in her yard are coming in blue this year. Did I want to come see? I'm going on Saturday. I used to think loyalty was something you owed people just because they were related to you. That love meant absorbing whatever someone asked of you, quietly, without complaint, because family is family and you don't keep score. I believed that for 31 years. It cost me $94,000 and a cancer diagnosis to understand how wrong I was. What happened to me wasn't random. It was the result of a system I had been participating in for years without fully seeing it. Every time I transferred money without asking questions, every time I said, "I'll figure it out," instead of, "I need help," every time I accepted my parents' absence as somehow reasonable, I was teaching everyone around me exactly what I was worth to them. Not intentionally, but the lesson landed anyway. And on the other side of that same ledger, Rosalind, a woman who had been cut out of my life before I was old enough to understand what was happening, who had no obligation to me that anyone would recognize on paper, who showed up to a waiting room week after week because she had made a private decision years ago that I was worth showing up for. She didn't ask for anything in return. She didn't announce herself. She just kept coming back. That's what I keep thinking about when people ask me how I knew it was time to stop. I didn't have a dramatic moment of clarity. I just finally noticed the contrast. The people who were supposed to be my family were in Savannah at a restaurant opening I had financed, and a woman I had been told was dead was leaving flowers at the front desk of my oncology center. The math was not complicated once I let myself do it. What I've come to understand is that how people treat you during the hardest moments is the truest information you will ever have about them. Not what they say, not their explanations, not the apology letters that arrive weeks later when the consequences have already landed. What they do when it costs them something, when showing up requires inconvenience, sacrifice, rescheduling. That's the data. My parents showed me their data clearly. Rosalind showed me hers just as clearly, just quietly, from a waiting room chair. I also had to reckon with my own part in it. The hardest kind of honesty isn't about what other people have done to you. It's about the ways you enabled it, the doors you left open, the times you said yes when you meant no, because you were afraid of what no would cost you. I'm not saying I deserved what happened. I didn't, but I did have more power in that situation than I was willing to use. And part of rebuilding has been learning to use it. Not aggressively, not with anger, just with the quiet firmness of a person who finally knows what she's worth. Fletcher's restaurant is closed now. Not because I stopped funding it. That alone wouldn't have been enough to save it. It closed because it was built on borrowed money, borrowed time, and someone else's sacrifices, and those foundations don't hold. That's not me finding satisfaction in his failure. That's just what happens when you build something without actually earning it. The structure eventually tells the truth. I have a clear scan. I have Rosalind's number in my phone. I have a savings account that belongs to no one but me, and I have, slowly and with a lot of help from a good therapist, a clearer sense of what I'm willing to give and what I'm not. That boundary isn't a wall. It's just the shape of a life I'm finally building on my own terms. Some people will call that selfish. They're welcome to.